Hello, hello, and welcome to another live from me. And today I'd like to talk about patterns of conforming. And I'm just wondering if you ever found yourself agreeing to something that you either didn't fully understand or perhaps even compromising your values just to fit in. Anybody recognize that? Well, also as women, we're often taught to be accommodating, taught to be polite and likable, even to the expense of our own needs and desires and preferences. So many of you have heard of me talking a lot about good girl syndrome, good girl conditioning. So the root of this kind of good girl conforming can actually be traced back to a variety of factors. It could be anything from social expectations, and that's like, at home, in the family, be a good girl, don't be too loud, right? Could be cultural norms. Oh, need to switch those off. It could be, anything that's happening in the family dynamic. And by that, I also mean that you could have any shape or form. You grew up in a dysfunctional family where as a child, you're so sensitive to the energies inside of the home and the well-being of your parents that if you notice something isn't okay with mommy or daddy or both, you compensate by looking at, well, what role can I play so that it kind of takes away the pressure from mommy and daddy. And for good girls, recovering good girls, that's what we would do. See, if I'm good, if I never rock the boat, if I'm just the best child, then I'm not going to add any extra pain or stress or struggle to mommy and daddy or whoever are your caregivers. So very often, good girls, we learn from a very young age to conforming to the expectations of others is really the key to being accepted, to be loved, and for belonging. And these are, of course, absolute key factors in survival when you're little. So this kind of conditioning can lead to patterns of conformity that can be hard to break free of. I know for myself, it took me many years, and in fact, a lot of pain to get to a place where I realized what my patterns were like. And yet, it had such a stronghold on me because it was so important for me that mommy and daddy were okay. All right. And I learned very early on that being a good girl, that was the place I needed to be. Don't be too loud, rather silent, don't speak up, and the list goes on. Now, there is also another route to conformity, and that's actually a trauma response that's closely linked to this pattern of behavior. And some of you who are on my mailing list will have seen me write about this a number of times. It's called the fawning trauma response. So some of you might have heard of fight flight. When you're in a stress response, you even want to fight. And if you can't fight, maybe then you'll flight, run away. If neither of those work, maybe you try to freeze, play dead, do nothing, or you fawn, which is like a please and appease response. Because if I please everybody around me, if there's a threat, they're not going to get aggressive or hurt me. Now, this might sound quite dramatic, but in the mind of a child, it can feel that dramatic. So the fawning response, one thing is to learn that you need to be a good girl, but the fawning response takes the conditioning even deeper, It is a survival mechanism that is usually developed in response to trauma or any kind of difficulty or struggle. Now, I know a lot of people think of trauma as, a big accident or near-death experience, but it could also be things like being abandoned. And I don't mean they left you for good, but even in moments, emotionally abandonment. It could be any type of abuse that might seem on the surface not too serious, but in fact, it's a huge array of challenges that live inside of trauma. So the behaviors involve people pleasing, being overly accommodating, and conforming to the expectations of others. Like we just look to others to be informed about how we should act, how we should show up in the world. And all of this is in order to avoid conflict or harm. So essentially, fawning is a way to play nice in order to stay safe. So for women with good girl conditioning, the fawning response can become very ingrained as a way of life. We might find ourselves constantly putting the needs of others before our own. How many of you can recognize that one? You want one thing or you need one thing, but then you do another to please. It could be that you agree with others, even if you don't agree. You don't want to do something that you've agreed with, or you compromise your values in order to fit in. And values are such a key piece for our contentment in the world, because values are really our moral compass. Or when we compromise on those, it's such an insult to our soul and to our well-being. So we may feel totally disconnected from our authentic selves. And authenticity is a key that good girls often lack. So we might struggle with imposter syndrome or any kind of lack of confidence in our own abilities. And we might even miss out on opportunities for growth and fulfillment because we're too afraid to take risks or stand out, because really we want to just blend in with everybody else. So at its core, the roots of good girl conditioning is a desire for acceptance and belonging. However, this desire can sometimes lead to loss of self. I mentioned that already, disconnected, like I said, from our voice. And then by starting to understand the root causes of this conditioning, we can start learning how to reclaim our truth back, our power back. And in the end, as a good girl, you can break free from this pattern of conformity and live a more empowered life, a more fulfilling life, a more happy life. So what can you do to break free from good girl conditioning, from this sort of automatic fawning response, and then instead start living more authentically? Like with any change, it starts with awareness. Like if you don't know that you have certain behaviors, how can you possibly expect to change them? So start recognizing ways in which you conform, and also really sensing into what's the impact that this has on your life. That's really the first step in change. And then from there, you want to start challenging your beliefs and start taking small steps towards speaking up, speaking your truth, setting boundaries, and start, getting a sense of, well, what's important to you? What are your values? What are your needs? So if you'd like to explore this a bit further, maybe you can get a journal and take a moment to reflect on how your own tendencies to conform. Are there any areas in your life where you're compromising your values or going against your own true desires or needs? What are some small steps that you can take towards living more authentically? Often it's sensing situations, how you're responding to them. Is there expansion or is there contraction? And anytime there's a contraction, that's when you want to get curious about where you have abandoned yourself, perhaps, which is a typical, it's abandoning yourself is really muddled up in all of this very technical term. Now, where are you, in what areas are you complying in order to belong? Could it be at work? Could it be in your relationship? And perhaps even think back and reflect at the times you've agreed to something without really thoroughly considering it or thinking about the consequences. So I would say that when we start living authentically, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities, of experiences that you might not have thought possible. And experiences is often just the experience of feeling yourself whole, complete, in joy. Now, if you think you might be struggling with this fawning response, with good girl syndrome, you're absolutely not alone. I know I've done like Google searches with around good girls, and it comes up huge numbers of women looking to get support in this. Now, of course, as a coach and counselor, I'm absolutely available if you need support in that journey. But also, as I mentioned in my last live, I'm also in the process of creating a group coaching program called Good Girls No More. And in fact, next month, I'll be doing a pre-launch run of this Good Girls No More program. And for that first pre-run, I will be offering an one-time only scholarship rate that's highly reduced for what I will be charging when I officially launch it. So if this sounds attractive to you, if you feel ready to really step out of the prison, and it really can feel like a prison of this good girl conformity, then I will, of course, you can reply in this in the comments below this video. I'll also post the application form for the no commitment, but just the application form for the program. And yeah, reach out if you want to talk to me a little bit more. It's 9 modules in total, but every 4 weeks we'll be doing a Q&A and a sharing session. So in total, it will be 12 weeks. So with that, I'm going to finish up. But yeah, I'd love to hear in the comments any thoughts and insights that you had as a result of listening to this piece around conforming and the good girl syndrome. From my heart to yours, have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye for now.